Let's start with a brief overview of the layout on the DP48. This DP48 actually has two separate monitoring channels, if you will. We can have two musicians on one unit. So musician A, so here on the left, you've got your master volume. You have a My Group and Mix A button here. I'll talk about these in a moment. We have 12 audio input groups. These are all stereo groups. You have your adjustment knob for the level of those groups, as well as a couple other things. We have a mirror of that over here on the right side with Monitor Mix B, Master Volume, your My Group and Mix B button. Like I say, we'll get into these in a little bit. Then we have a setup and SD record button, and then pressing these together will actually get you into your preset settings. We have an EQ, a couple EQ buttons here with the low, mid, high. We have compression, reverb, and panning. Microphone for the onboard microphones to adjust the level. Auxiliary input. And I'll show you the back in just a moment. You can see where that comes into the unit. And then we have our input channel controls here for assigning channels to these 12 groups, as well as editing the channels that are already assigned to these 12 groups. Then the select edit knob, which is what you'll use to navigate most stuff on the screen as you're going through menus. The back has auxiliary in, left and right here. So if you wanted to use that auxiliary input, you can feed it into A or B, hook this up to your phone or whatever, iPad, tablet, computer. You can listen to playback of audio from these devices so you can practice along. We over here have headphone, stereo outputs, A and B. A for the Monitor Mix A, B for Monitor Mix B. Then we have line outputs that are mono, which are good for like wireless in-ear units. We have an SD card slot. We'll talk a little bit more about what that's for in a moment. We've got our input, data input from the console, as well as the power for some of these units here, and the through to feed another, the power button, and the DC input. Quick note about the power and the power being fed from this cable. If we're getting power through this cable, which is called PoE, power over Ethernet, we do not want to use the DC input and use a adapter that you plug in to an outlet. That can damage the unit. So if you're unsure whether yours is powered via PoE or DC, there's a couple ways to check. First, we need to make sure that our rack is turned on in the back, on the backstage, because it actually has the hub in it that provides the power to these units. We could try powering on the rack, power this on by pressing the power, see if it comes on its own. If it does not, we might need to get a DC input. This is only used if you're not using PoE, or if we're having to use this through to go to another unit, then it's required to use the DC input because it doesn't pass power through this port. So that's a general overview of the unit itself. Okay, let's get into adjusting levels. We have a mix knob here to adjust the level of each of these 12 groups. This is for Monitor Mix A, this is for B. So if we were to select one here, you can see we've got level A and level B, and then as we adjust, you'll see the level A changes. If I adjust this one, you'll see level B changes. So we can go through and adjust and set up how we need to. Don't forget a couple things on volume. Make sure you have your volume. I would say once you start up the unit, at least halfway, volume-wise, would be where I would shoot here. And then for these levels, if you get yourself up to 0 and you're still needing more, you can push it over 0 dB on the level. But once you start getting past 2 and you get it to, let's say, 5 dB, then we need to take a look. We likely need to turn down the rest of the channels so you have level there, and then turn up the master a little bit more. The reason why is just simply there's ideal gain for every part of this. And so we want to make sure that we're getting the cleanest signal possible, and that's the best way to achieve that. You also have panning adjustment on each of these 12. By simply having the pan brought up here, you can see it's selected for A, and we can pan it left and right. Now that's the pan of a stereo group. So stereo means you've got a left and a right, just like you would have with regular headphones that you listen to music on. And if you pan a left and right mix, what it's doing is it's shifting the whole stereo image to one side or the other. That is useful when you want to adjust your panning based on what you're seeing visually. For example, I like to use my panning to set vocalists and instruments where they are in relation to where I'm sitting on the stage. So obviously I'm typically in the booth, drum booth, and so I will pan out, for example, the keys to the right, and then the bass just a little inside of that to the right. And it allows me to basically look out and feel like I'm hearing audio coming from where the sources are actually located in my vision. So that's where this is useful. There are other ways to pan, and we'll check that out here in just a bit. One useful feature that we haven't really discussed and you may not know about is the My Group feature. My Group allows you to set one of these 12 stereo groups down here specifically to this knob. And so no matter what's selected down here, you'll always be able to adjust this particular group you assign here by just grabbing this knob and going. So for example, I'm going to press and hold mix A to assign my group A. So currently it shows that I have the click loop assigned to my group. What's nice is the person using B can assign something different. So for example, they have the drums. Go ahead and reassign that because I just turned it off. There we go. All right, so what's nice about this? Well, you can actually, like if there's two of you using this, you can actually just grab this and turn it when you need it. So let me turn up some volume here and we'll check that out. So if I'm currently using monitor mix A and I wanted less of the click, but person on monitor mix B is working on adjusting vocal levels in their monitor, I can just grab this and that just adjusts the click loop level. So that's very useful because you don't have to worry about finding which one you're wanting to adjust and grabbing here. You can just grab and turn this knob to get to it. So let's talk about using in-ears. We all use in-ears here. Some of you use headphones, but this can apply to that as well. Some of the issues that people find with using in-ears and some of the objections is just the fact that you kind of feel isolated because these do isolate so much ambient sound from outside of your ears. We as humans are not used to this. We're used to hearing everything kind of around us. And believe it or not, even the air moving makes a sound. And so that's something that we're used to hearing as well. So adding some ambient from the room makes it kind of feel like you've opened up your ears, like you've taken these out, and that maybe you're using a monitor wedge instead of having in-ears or headphones on your ears. So we've got a couple ways we can actually set up ambience, and so let's take a look at those ways right now. Okay, so let's talk about adding ambience into your monitor mix. There's two ways we can do this. The first way is using the ambient mics that we provide off the front edges of the stage. These are good if you want to hear what's kind of going on out in the congregation and kind of in the room, which is great if you're leading worship, or if you want to hear the congregation singing along with you or anything like that. It's able to be added through, normally we have it set up on group 12. That's not always the case, but group 12 is where it's set from us by default. Obviously, that's going to change if you adjust the assignment. So you can add some of that in through here. But the other way to do this is, you may have noticed these little, what look like holes up in the top corners. Those are microphones. There's built-in ambient mic inside of this unit. So using this mic button, we can hit that and we can turn up this ambient mic that's built into the unit. So let's see here. Yeah. So we can adjust it obviously separately depending on which mix you're on. These are nice because it feels more like where you are standing, obviously, because you've got mics right where you're standing. And so it's going to be more like your actual ears. I will say, with any kind of ambience, be careful how much you add, because it can quickly muddy or negatively color your monitor mix where you can't hear or understand things. That is especially true when using the mics out in the room, because they are picking up a reflection off the back wall. And so when the sound goes out of the speakers, hits the back wall and comes back to the mic, you're getting a very delayed sound, which can cause a lot of issues. And that's why I always tell everyone, if you're going to do anything regarding, where you want to hear yourself singing, or if you're singing and playing together or whatever, that at least we need to set you up a monitor wedge on stage, and I can do that for you if you need that. But the preference always is to use in-ears, because it doesn't add extra noise into the room by using the in-ear. So, and that'll keep you from hearing that echo off the back wall and being delayed in your response to things, because it happens a lot. If you see people take their ears off or their headphones off and they're listening, you hear an echo off the back wall and it throws you off tempo completely. So make sure you talk to me if you need some adjustment or help adjusting your ambience for your ears. Let's talk about saving our presets. We've already done a lot of work to get our mix where we want it to be. And so we want to make sure we save it so we have a good place to start the next time we play. Now, keep in mind, things change from day to day. A musician may not play as vigorously the following Sunday, or a singer may not feel like they have as much power behind their voice, and so they may not be as loud, or just little things like that. We try and compensate for that in the production booth, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate here. So understand, saving a preset doesn't mean it's going to be perfect the next time you bring it up. It just means you've got a good place to start from to adjust your monitor. You will need to adjust your monitor mix from week to week, most likely. There are weeks where I will have a headache, so I need to turn certain things down so that I can actually play. And there's some weeks where I'm just, my hearing, for some reason, I'm picking up certain frequencies differently. Maybe I have a cold or something and my ears are stuffed up because of it. Then that's going to change your monitor mix. So just keep in mind, it's a place to start. It's not the perfect mix every week. The way we get a preset saved, we look right here at the SD record and setup buttons. There's a preset text between those two and a gray outline. That's telling us that if we press both of these, we can get in the preset menu. So we press both these buttons. You'll see they've lit up red here. We've got a lot of options here. We're going to save, so we're going to use this select edit knob to scroll down to save. We could push directly in on this knob and it selects. And now we've got options on which of these 12 slots we can save to. If you see yellow, that means that there's already a preset save there. If you see white, there's nothing saved on those slots. So unless these are one of yours and you know that they're one of yours, do not use them because you're going to be overriding someone else's mix. If you do not have your name on the bottom of the mixer with a label maker, then let me know and I can fix that for you. We're going to use 3 here because that's what I've been using. So I'm going to save this to 3. And it's going to tell me, hey, there's already something here. Are you sure you want to overwrite that? I'm going to say yes because I know that 3 is mine. There we go. So I've just saved my preset. I can hit both these buttons again and get back out to the home screen. Now when we go to recall, we can press both those buttons to get into the same menu. We can go to load and press. Here it shows you where there are saves, preset saves, by showing the button white. And if the button's turned off, then there's nothing in those slots. So selecting one of these will do nothing for you. You have to select one that there's already preset in. So I'm going to recall 3, and there we go. I am ready to go. Presets save everything about the system. They save everything in the setup. They save everything in your assign and edited functions, your mic, all of your EQ and your compression, reverb, and pan. It saves everything. It even saves the brightness of the buttons and LCD. So all of that's saved within a preset. All right, let's talk about assigning channels. So over here on the right side, we have this input channel section. We have an assign and edit button. Assign allows us to assign specific channels to each of these groups. So let's check that out. I'm going to hit assign, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn up my monitor mix here so we can hear what happens. So you'll notice that there's a little yellow square, and that's telling us which one we're currently listening to. When you're in assign, you're soloing the channel that the little yellow square is on. So right now we're on 1, which tells me it's Justin's guitar. So if I scroll over, I can see that it's changed. And so we can see what each of these channels are as we scroll through. This naming comes from the console itself. So on vocals, if you see the names and they don't match the people that are on stage, that means that we haven't had the chance to set up the names to the mic yet, okay? So we can scroll through here and hear what is on that channel so we can decide whether we want to assign that one or not. So for example, vocal 1,
this is the praise, make a dead man walk again.
We've got Chad assigned there.
Open the grave, I'm coming out.
So let's take a look at something else like,
This is the sound of driving.
now we're looking at group 12 to see what all is assigned to it. So I'm going to scoot through all of these. You can hear as we go over these. So there's our ambient mic on one side of the stage. There's the ambient mic on the other side of the stage. And then we have 2 down here, which are most likely they are reverb returns from the console. We have 32 channels on the console, but these units have 48 inputs, hence the DP48 name. What that allows us to do is take all 32 channels from the console directly to the unit and assign 16 additional feeds into this mixer. So, for example, some of the things that we did were we fed in some of the reverb from the vocals into these channels, which right now, because I don't have it turned on, it's not coming through here. We also have a few other things set up on some of these others, but we can set those up if you specifically need them. We also have one of these set up for the talkback from the booth. So that's basically how you would assign, is go through and you click when you're on one that you want to assign. So you can see I just unassigned that one because the blue is gone. So I can hit that and reassign it now. That's how you can set up each one of these groups. You can set up these 12 groups with as many of those channels really as you want. Obviously, the more you add, the less flexible it becomes down here, but there is a way for us to adjust each individual channel that's fed into each one of these groups. So you set up your group the way you want. For example, a great example of the groups are on the drums. So we have the entire drum sent to this one stereo set. So let's back up here. So we can see we've got an overhead there, another overhead, the bottom of the snare, toms, there's the snare, there's the kick. So we have all of these assigned to this one. Now, that would be an issue if we couldn't adjust each one individually, but we can do that. So we'll look at that next. Okay, so now let's look at editing. I have this channel soloed by just holding down on it to solo it. You can see the little yellow and white S there. You can also tell by it flashing. So it's soloed currently. I'm gonna hit edit, and that gives me this screen here. It looks very similar to Assign, except for it doesn't show you all the input coming in, and it doesn't give you the the input via the red dot. It gives you the channels that are specifically assigned to this. So we can take each channel, for example, the kick, and we can adjust the volume up or down. We can also click down and adjust the pan of each individual thing. Remember, these are stereo, so you have the left and right field to use. And so take advantage of panning if you are a musician. If you're a singer and you're on a wireless pack, unfortunately, the wireless packs are only mono, so this isn't gonna help you. It's best to keep all of yours panning straight in the middle. But if you are a singer, take advantage of the stereo field because it helps with spreading out the signal. I have this set up the exact way it would look if I was sitting in the drum booth playing. So basically, it's gonna look exactly, or it's going to sound exactly like it looks to me. So I've got a tom just off to the front of me on the left a little. I've got a floor tom to my right, and you can see it here. And then I've got the snare just a little off to the left a little there. Left overhead's pan all the way left, right overhead's pan all the way right. That helps me with like I said before, what's going on matching, or what I hear matching what I see. So very useful to use panning. Also, you can see, like I said, that you can adjust each thing individually. Where that's extremely useful is things like, let's take a look at guitars here. We have 2 electric guitars on this Sunday. We have Justin, and so you can see Justin's a little panned, and he's currently at 0 dB. And we've got Chad, which is still panned the other way and at 0. If Chad's guitar was a lot quieter than Justin's, we could adjust the balance between the two by changing this. So that already seems better. So yeah, using the stereo field and using the edit to adjust the volume balance between the 2 guitars, extremely helpful. So remember, that's an option on here as well. Let's talk about EQ and reverb. EQ is an extremely powerful tool, but it can also be very detrimental to your mix. The way it's powerful is we can take a vocal, let's take, for example, this one here, and we can adjust the EQ on it specifically so that we can cut out frequencies that are harsh, or we can cut out frequencies that are boomy, as we would call for lower frequencies. So you can see here that we've got an adjustment on this EQ. I go to the EQ by selecting the channel I want to adjust, and then I can hit low, mid, and high to select between them. Once you get in there, you're actually able to adjust the amount and the frequency you're changing it at. The low and the high are shelves, which means, as you can see from this image, whatever frequency you set them at, you're going to be boosting or reducing from that frequency down or up, depending on which one you're using. So I'm adjusting negative 5 dB down from starting at 160 and going all the way down through the rest of the audio spectrum. If we were to look at the high, I'm boosting 5 dB at the 8 kilohertz frequency and going all the way up through the rest of the audio spectrum. So those are specifically shelves. Make sure you use those to, more often than not, you would probably use them to cut than to boost, but you can boost to get a little bit more clarity in the top end like this, which helps you to understand nuances of the music or of vocal parts. Let's solo this and see if we can't tell a difference here. Okay, so now we've soloed. We can grab here and adjust. So you can probably hear that the top end on her voice has been reduced. So with the low end cut some, you can tell what that will do. There we go. Now the mid is what we call a bell curve, and it's at a specific width, so you can see as we adjust it here, you can hear that. So just because it says mid, that doesn't mean that it's only at a certain frequency band. You can actually move it to the upper frequencies or the lower frequencies, which is nice if you need to cut specific areas. All right, so that's how to use that. Let's look at reverb. So we can use reverb to add to specific instruments or vocals. So let me turn this up. So now we have a little bit of reverb on that vocal. For vocalists, I know that a lot of times adding reverb helps them. One, I know it helps them because they don't feel so isolated with headphones on. But you can add reverb into any of these 12 channels. Just be careful because you can make them mix muddy very quickly by adding reverb to a bunch of stuff. We can also compress. This is more useful for things like for example, the click. So if we were to compress the click, so now you can see how it got louder, and it's actually clipping. And that's because we have compressed this to a point where it's actually clipping out, because it's boosted that volume. So we'll turn this back down here. So the compression is great on things that that might tend to get out of hand quickly. Sometimes even on like vocals, because they are working the mic, but there's still dynamics in it. If you're feeling like you're getting, the vocal is getting lost, you can turn that compression up and then turn the vocal channel itself down as you're adjusting the compression up. As you add compression, it's putting a limit on the top and then bringing all the lower stuff up. So it's overall increasing the volume. That's why it's important to also turn down on the channel. So let's talk about this Mix A and Mix B button. I know you've been waiting to hear about it. So these are actually buttons to allow you to EQ, compress, and add reverb to your overall mix. So we can add limiting. It's not compression here, it's limiting, which is basically just the top. It squishes down the top so it doesn't get too loud, which is great if you have somebody that unplugs their instrument without warning and it creates a loud pop, or if something like that. That's what that limiter does. It also just ensures that the level doesn't get over a certain amount so you don't hurt your ears. You can also add reverb to it. If you're wanting to add reverb to the entire mix, be careful with reverb because it can muddy the mix considerably, especially across an entire mix. And then you've got EQ to EQ the entire output that you're hearing of your mix. So you've got those tools, feel free to use them. With EQ, we adjust things in the production booth according to how they sound in the room and how they sound on the stream, and we try and find a happy medium. That doesn't mean that it's going to sound the same through your monitor. There are so many things that make a sound source sound differently, and one of those things is the person hearing them. The other thing is the speakers that are producing them. So our in-ears are possibly producing this way different than what we are hearing in the room, because the room, there's different speakers. We have the room to consider when we're making the mix, because the room does influence the sound of the mix just by the way the room is set up, the shape, what frequencies are being bounced around where. So we have to take all that into consideration when we're EQing. So it may not sound the same in here. Use your EQ to get it where you like it. But I would say if you EQ everything in solo and then put it together, you're probably not going to like your outcome. So take each channel, EQ it on top of the mix, and then go from there with each of the additional channels if you need to do so. If you want to add a different sort of reverb, you can do that by going into Setup, and you'll want to use the pan and reverb buttons to scroll over. And here you can see we've got 4 types. We've got Ambience, Club, Hall, and Cathedral. Most of the mixers should be already set to Hall because Hall is the most common reverb used on like vocals and things like that. But that doesn't mean you can't change them, so feel free to change those. Also, you'll notice we've got this SD record button here. So let me go back and show you kind of what's happening there. So we have some set up here with the recorder itself. You can record your auxiliary in as well as the mic if you wish to do so. And then of course these are playback volumes for when you play back what's on your SD card. And then here are the rest of your setup options. You've got an overall trim to reduce the entire volume down a little if you notice that you've got some clipping as it's hitting the SD card. You can adjust that down. Record mode tells you what it's going to record. If it says Mix A, it's going to be everything that's in Mix A. If it says Mix B, it'll be everything that's in Mix B. There is another option that allows you to remove whatever you've set as My Group, and that is Mix minus A and Mix minus B. So those actually will remove this group, whatever it is down here, out of what's being recorded. So for example, if you were playing drums that week and you wanted to go back and practice to what what songs were played, you can take that group out. If you've assigned drums as to your mic group, you can use -A and record it, and then you can have something to practice along with without having the drums in the mix. So nifty little way to use that. There's also a limiter on the record, so that way it'll keep it from getting into clipping. And then if you want to record your mix, make sure you bring an empty flash card an empty SD card, because as soon as you pop it in, you're likely going to need to format it. And to make sure you capture what you want, I would do it first anyways. The way that this works, you have SD card. Okay, and you can see it right here is the slot. We'll put it in just like the picture showing. Pop it in. And now, if we go back out of the setup, we can hit SD record, and it's ready to start recording. You can see I've got some previous recordings on here. So we can actually hit any of these buttons up here will allow us to, you can see the stop, play, pause, record, fast forward, and rewind buttons up here. That's actually what controls this. So if we wanted to record right now, we could hit comp, which is the record button here, and it's going to start recording. So right now it's recording mix A with my group included. And so it's telling you how long it's been recording and then how much time you've got left that you can record. When you're done, simply hit stop, and you'll see there it is. Now if you wanted to, you could scroll down and check it by selecting it, and then you can hit play to play it back. Okay, so what constitutes a good monitor mix? That's going to be different depending on who you are. The key things to remember are make sure that you feel confident in what you've got in your ears. It should, in fact, for me, if my inner mix is great, I feel energized and excited to play, and it makes playing so much more enjoyable. Couple considerations. I know that some only like to have, for example, 1 or 2 instruments and maybe a little bit of click and then all the vocals in their ears. And that's okay, but you're not hearing the band and what's being played fully. So if you're a musician playing an instrument, it's really important to hear what everybody's doing so that you know what you're doing is meshing up okay. Because it's the worst thing to go back and listen to it later and say, wow, what I was playing just did not work there. And you don't always notice it in the moment because you are enjoying your playing, you're excited, and you're playing along. But your part, if it doesn't fit, it detracts from the song a little bit. So it's very important for you to keep that in mind when you're building your monitor mix. I keep everything in my monitor mix. I do have it at different levels, obviously, but I keep everything in there so I can know what's going on. The reason why is because that can allow me to find little places to hit accents or things like that. So my suggestion would be add a little bit of everything. We play as a group, we play as a team, and we want to give our very best. We want to give our all to the Lord when we're worshiping. And one way we can help to elevate that to the next level is to make sure we're hearing everything that's going on around us and that our parts are fitting in well. We don't want to run over someone else, for example, playing a lead line of some sort or something that detracts attention away from a vocal part, or 2 people playing something that are just kind of fighting each other. That's very distracting when you're listening to it. So just taking consideration that it's important to have a little bit of everybody in your mix, but mix it to where you feel comfortable. I know that some people have asked how I mix my ears. So I'm going to go ahead and mix my ears right here. I'm going to show you it all. In fact, I'm going to turn everything off, and we're going to start from basically scratch. And I'll show you kind of how I build my mix. Okay, so I've zeroed out the entire mixer. I've got everything turned down. So let's start building a mix. So the first thing that I'm going to start with when I start my mix is I'm going to start with the click. The click and loop is important. It's not just important for a drummer, it's important for everyone. Yes, drummers are and bassists are the rhythmic backbone of the band, but it's still important to know where their time scale is. So this will just help us keep all completely together. And think about it, if I was to get off, just a little bit on beat, which, I mean, I'm human, it happens, more than I like to admit, but in any case, we need to make sure that we all have the click so we're all staying on tempo and it doesn't just fall apart. So let's start with some click. I'm gonna turn this up to about, I don't know, probably about -10. Let's give some volume here. Let's go up to about 3/4 here.
2, 3, 4.
All right, so here we go. We've got that set. Unfortunately, right now we're in a place of the loop where there's not anything else going on. I'm gonna guess on setting these. I'm gonna set these about 10. If I'm not mistaken, all of these have some singing at the beginning. Now the entire band's in, so we can. So I'm going to put these all up about -5.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Okay, now I'm going to turn up a little bit of bass. Building the bottom of my pyramid now, basically.
2, 3, 4.
Saturday was silent. Surely it was through. Since when has impossible ever stopped?
I'm going to listen for a second here. So, good level of bass. I'm going to move to electrics now, just because I hear them playing.
Chorus 2, 3.
I like electric guitar, so I'll probably add a decent amount. I feel like I've got just a little too much vocal. I'm going to back these back down to about 10. There we go. Let's add some keys.
Turn around 2, 3, 4. Verse 2, 3, 4.
Okay, full drum kit's in now. I'd probably turn that down just a little more than that. I'm gonna add a little bit of acoustic in. Now I'm gonna add in some of the room mics.
Instrumental 2, 3, 4. Bridge
Okay.
2, 3.
Where are all the vocals? So I just found that this one wasn't assigned for some reason. Usually,
Bridge 2.
I don't have this panned. I usually have my click right up the middle. Must have adjusted it before.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
This is the praise, make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming
All right.
I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming out.
Once again, I'm going to set my...
This is the sound of dry bones.
So now I can grab this
Instrumental 2, 3, 4.
and adjust drums as I need them. So that's how I'd build my mix.
Interlude 2.
A lot of the time I build my mix similar to how I'd build it in the house, but that doesn't mean that's how it works best for you. This is just what's most energizing for me to play with. And of course I adjust the ambient mics quite a bit.
Interlude 2, 3.
So you can see how just adding this ambience in can kind of make it a little bit harder to understand. So to me, that's an ideal mix. That's how I'd like my mix to sound in my ears each week, with exception of adjusting my drums a little bit and my click a little. So this is all up to you to do. Like I say, you don't have to use the ambient here. You can use the ambient here by using the mic. I don't use that because inside the drum cage, this is terrible. It just sounds like a muddy mess, so I don't like that. I'd rather hear what's going on outside. But I don't always use it either, so let's see, if I was to kill this,
Chorus 2, 3.
so to me now it sounds like I'm listening to like a CD type mix. Maybe not a live mix. All right. All right, so that's how I'd build my mix for, you know, a normal Sunday. Obviously, this setup is not a normal Sunday. This was from Easter. There were a lot of channels that we had to, what we would call submix to get in, or we had to add them to additional groups. For example, my direct drum mics on the big percussion stuff I was playing was mostly being picked up there by the room mics and everybody else's mics because it was just so loud. Percussive stuff out on the stage is extremely loud in the room, and so that's why we have the drums in the cage like we do, and that's why we don't really use monitors because of just how much noise it puts into the room. So, but on those big Sundays like that, those big special occasion services, you know, we just deal with it and do the best we can with it. So, all right. So I'm going to stop this here because I'm going to give this recording to you in the mix so you can kind of hear what the recording was like directly on here. I'm also recording the output separately, so we can kind of use either one of those. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And hopefully this will lead you to a better worship experience, because ultimately that's what it's about. It's about our worship. And so being able to worship freely by knowing our music by heart and knowing, you know, the where we're going allows us to just listen and focus on worship rather than worrying about the music itself and where we're going. So this is a tool to help us kind of freely worship is what I would say.